call this meeting to order. This is the annual meeting of the Congregation of St. John's Lutheran Church. It's January 23rd, 2022. Thank you for staying, be part of the decision-making here. I'm Liz Krochak, the council president, and I can give you my church council report. It is also in the annual bulletin. So greetings and blessings to you in 2022. The world pandemic continues to challenge our families and our church communities. As we try to return to normal services and functions, we are realizing that we now have a new normal. Church services have resumed, and it feels good to be back in church, and we get to sing. Of course, we would like to see more people and families in church again, but understand that folks need to feel safe, and when they feel ready, we will be here. Confirmation classes have resumed, and so has Sunday school and other church activities. We continue our search for a music director and a Sunday school superintendent. Those duties have been divided and are being covered by several people. Online services will continue, and we're looking for a little help to operate the equipment during the services. On the financial side, in 2020, St. John applied for and received a $25,000 PPP loan that helped us pay our bills when church offerings suffered due to the pandemic and kept us operating. In 2021, we again applied for and received a PPP loan, this time for $27,000. Again, this will help to offset the reduced offerings that we have been experiencing. Our budget is already pretty lean, and we continue to look for ways to reduce expenses. We have generous members of our congregation who volunteer their time for services that we would otherwise need to pay for. Our online Simply Giving has increased to 44%, which is terrific. That helps us anticipate income to pay our monthly expenses. The offerings were down 28% from where they were before the 2 COVID years. The PPP loans are keeping us afloat, but there will likely not be a PPP loan for 2022. We are considering more dramatic cuts to our budget and looking for ways to increase revenues. The Stewardship Committee raised over $100,000 in the past few years to bolster the Building Restoration Facilities Maintenance Fund. That will help us to proceed with interior repairs on the church and continue with the ongoing facility repairs and maintenance of this beautiful old church. The Church Council is grateful to our church family for your continued prayers and support of our church. We are not a church without you. Respectfully submitted, Liz Krochak. That is our year or two in a nutshell. So we're grateful to you sitting here because we're preaching to the choir when we talk to all of you here, regular visitors of the church. And our financial situation we'll talk about in a minute, but I'd like to get Pastor's update next.
Mm-hmm. Good morning. Once again, we heard from our scripture this morning about different gatherings. And I hope you, from that Nehemiah reading that we had, actually realized that was just after they were coming out of an exile, from actually being taken away from their land. They were able to actually worship together for the first time in a long time. It's a huge thing. One of the things you hear and see within that, part of that was added in because they'd skipped a couple of the things with the names, but the people were literally crying because they're able to return and to be able to be in a place where they're gathered together in one body. And so we continue to strive for how we are able to do that and to continue to look at what it means for us in our ministry together as we continue to do so. And it does involve us using those gifts and talents that we heard in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 of how important it is that we continue to share, participate, and utilize our gifts together. And I think that's one of the things that continue to lift up. We had 10 baptisms last year. We had our 12 confirmations. We were continuing to have and be in ministry together, and we give thanks. We were able to meet together for our weekly Wednesday Bible study all throughout. And so one of the things that we continue to see is how we continue to be active and involved within the life of this community and how we continue to be here gathered as one. Part of my report, it talked about a thing that there was talking about inactivity and inactivity within leaders and people who are part of the church. And Tom Rainer is one of the ones who kind of wakes us up a little bit. Has studied churches and is open to understanding the difference between within our church body an active and an inactive member. An active member is somebody who comes, who communes, and who gives one time a year. That's the consideration for an active membership. Inactives would be those who are a part of this body, who actually continue to be those who need and should be sharing those gifts and talents with one another because they are variety, that continue to help with the ministry that it goes on here at St. John. What he talked about, though, was it says it's an oxymoron to call somebody who belongs to the body of Christ inactive. This is something where we continue to know and to continue to grow into how do we understand how we are called together to share in this new way of, yes, for those people who are able to come in and share their gifts and talents to the variety of ministries that we have, but also for those who are at home and feeling that that's where they need to be for this time until they can feel like they can come in and join together because they want to. This is one thing that we consider, that we are all active and we need to continue to share those gifts. There is no inactivity and there are no insignificant parts of this body of church. We are gathered here and we give thanks for each and every one of you as we continue to struggle, yes, but as we continue to grow. And I give thanks that we are able to have the leadership of those who help in the midst of trying to gather again for Sunday school, which we didn't until September. Yet we're continuing to make that a focus of how we gather together. Yes, the numbers are lower, but in the midst of this year, it's something that we're continuing to focus on. It's at the heart of our congregation, how we continue to share our education, our worship together, and our service to this community. And we get to give thanks for the council and all the staff who continue to work diligently, and we have been and continue to be a part of this congregation and this community, and we give thanks for you who are here today and for those who are joining us, because you continue to be a part of this body of Christ here at St. John, and we are united together with our conference, the Minnesota River Conference that we belong to, within the Southeastern Minnesota Synod that we're a member congregation of the ELCA, but more importantly, as this body of whole Christians who are gathered together for ministry. So we give thanks as you continue to be a part of this, as we continue to gather together, and how we continue to share this word. Our mission statement is there. As children of God, we are a family, and we are living out the gospel of Christ in our worship, fellowship, and service. We continue to be that, and we are continuing to look forward to how we can look like that in the future. So, thank you.
And now the secretary's report. The secretary will read the minutes from last year's annual meeting. We've asked Carol to do an encore and read one more time. Carol served 6 years on the council. She's her last day.
Okay, the annual congregational meeting for St. John Lutheran Church was called to order at 10 o'clock a.m. on Sunday, January 24th, 2021, by Congregational President Liz Krochop, who discussed the challenges that were met by the congregation during 2020. Video technology was purchased. This technology will remain in place permanently. We changed internet providers to enable services necessary to live stream our church services. Liz went on to discuss the bell tower and its related interior issues and future repairs that will be necessary. She also updated us on the PPP loans that were taken out to allow the church to function during the shutdown, as well as the fact that these should be converted to grants that would not need to be repaid. Online giving grew dramatically. Liz thanked the church council members as well as Dan Hartle at the bank for all of his assistance. In his update, Pastor Jason talked about how in 2020 we needed to and were able to make changes. Births, of course, occurred. Additionally, baptism and weddings were able to occur. Confirmation classes and the adult Bible study moved to online and hybrid formats. He also talked about the PPP loans and a gift from the estate of Darlene Collier, which helped to pay off the bell tower. The Secretary's report from the annual meeting in January of 2020 was read. Kathy Peterson made a motion to accept the report. Connie Chiak seconded the motion carried. Regarding the Treasurer's report, Liz Vlasic and Lisa Krochak were unable to attend the meeting, so Liz Krochak read the report. Charles Richter asked about how the funds from the donation from Darlene Collier were utilized. Kathy Peterson asked about a possible PPP loan this year. The congregation as a whole discussed a plan for when we go back to being fully open. It was suggested that we create a plan. Diane DeWitt made a motion to accept the Treasurer's report as presented. Doug Jerstead seconded the motion. The motion was carried. We had 2 ballot questions that needed to be addressed at our annual meeting. For ballot question number 1, our congregation has been asked to update our congregational constitution to align it with the 2019 ELCA model constitution. Ballot question number 2 is an amendment to C11.02. This will change the term of the treasurer to up to 3 years or until their successor is elected. The paragraph will be changed to read, the congregation council shall elect its officers, and they shall be the officers of the congregation. The officers shall be elected by written ballot. The president, vice president, and secretaries shall serve for a term of 1 year or until their successors are elected. The treasurer shall serve a term of up to 3 years or until their successor is elected. Their terms shall begin at the end of the annual meeting at which they are elected. The nominations for church council were as follows. For a 3-year term, Dave Wingy, Josh Kahinka, and Charlene Napper. For a 1-year term, Don Anderson. Kathy Peterson made a motion that nominations be closed. Doug Jerstead seconded the motion carried. All candidates were elected by secret ballot, and the ballot questions were passed. Charles Richter made a motion to adjourn at 10:48. The motion was seconded by Dennis Smith. The motion passed. Pastor Jason closed with the Lord's Prayer. Respectfully submitted, outgoing Secretary Carol Keith.
Any discussion or changes to the Secretary's report?
I do have one. I found a typo when I was proofreading just now. In the update for Pastor Jason, there should be 3 Ps for PPP loan.
Got it. Gonna get a motion to accept the Secretary's report. Thank you, Charlene. Is there a second? I got Wendy in the back row. Motion by Charlene, second by Wendy, to approve the Secretary's report. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. However many there are to 0. Someone's got to count for me. The annual report. You all have a copy of the annual report with reports from every one of our committees, and we can move to the Treasurer's report. Jim Shehawk is here, and he'll give a little update on cemetery later. I'm going to ask Liz and Lisa to come and give the Treasurer's report. Lisa is our council treasurer, and Liz volunteers her service for bookkeeping. We couldn't do this without her.
So, good morning. I'm Lisa Krochak, and as Liz mentioned, I'm the treasurer. I'm a nominated treasurer, but Liz here does all the work. And I have a bigger copy, so.
Yeah, what's up with that? But I haven't memorized, so I'll kind of relate to go through it. And first off, I'd like to say this is going to be a tough meeting, and I'm going to make some suggestions that Lisa and I and others have talked about that will be tough. What I notice out here is pretty much everybody out here has been on the council or part of our congregation in some aspect. So thank you all for being here, and I think you're going to all know what kind of a tough situation we are in. And so I'm going to kind of go through it basically, and I'm not a great public speaker. I get a little nervous, just to let you know, but we'll go from there. I also sat on the council for 6 years, and then I got booted off, which is fine, but I stay as the bookkeeper just to help out. So I've seen these numbers since I've been on the council, and I've not seen much improvement. I've seen a lot of wishing and hoping, and been on budget meetings where we make a budget and hope that we get enough money in. So you can see the numbers yourself and how they're kind of not very good this year. What we did rely on, and thank you, they provide, is a donor that would give at the end of the year and kind of shore up our budget. So we always looked pretty good at the end of the year because of this donor. But this year people have situations in their lives and things can't always work the way they can, and the donor did not come through, so now we're sitting with this large deficit. But we had our PPP loan that I applied for, the first one, that we were able to use to shore that up and make up so that at least last year we became even. Same with this year, so council's going through our budget. We've got this $27,000 PPP loan that we applied for. Got it, it's already been forgiven, so we don't have to pay it back. But then we have to use that as our cash flow for next year to make us through the year, because we cannot rely on people giving us an extra $27,000 to cover that. Why is this meeting tough? Because we can't let it continue to go to the next year. We have to be brutally honest with ourselves and say, hey, how is the future looking? Are we going to be able to have enough money next year to go on and assume that we're going to get $27,000 to make up our budget? I can't live in a world like that. I don't live in a work world like that or in my own environment. I like to be kind of planned ahead and rather have a little bit of extra stash sitting there than having it be on a prayer and a hope that somebody's going to give it. So it'd have been nice if we got it and then we still had our $27,000. We'd have been looking, okay, but we still have to make these hard decisions today for the future of our congregation and our church. So that's kind of what we've kind of all been around talking and just making some suggestions. So we do have the budget ready. Doesn't mean it's the same. This is a budget that's represented from the council to you, for you guys to be able to say yes or no, or what do we think about that, or what else, or maybe you've got some great ideas of where we can trim and get it to where we need to be. I personally think we have to trim about $20,000 out of our budget. Yikes, that's a big number. Because once this PPP loan is, I have nothing else out there to apply for to get us through. I've done a little research. I've contacted Trondheim, which is in the same boat that we are. Lutheran Church lost a lot of their memberships. They're even not as good as us because they have a mortgage and they have to make that mortgage payment. Thank you for all of you prior to us that we don't have a mortgage. All of our former ancestors, whoever did that, we have no mortgage payment, which is awesome. But they have to deal with that. So I just kind of asked what kind of expenses they have versus what we have. They were kind of surprised at some of the ones we have. I was kind of surprised at some of the lack of ones they don't have, but they have to operate very lean, and I think as our congregation, we need to start thinking like that. We can't think how it's been for the last how many years, because that's how we've always done it. We have to think to the future of our kids, our grandkids, us, everybody, and that's why we have to go through this list. Sorry, I'm talking a little too much. So as you can see, our income, when we're looking at the budget, and prior to me taking over, we used to look at as a whole. So anybody that donated to any fund would be part of this presentation, but that didn't make sense because that doesn't pay for what our church operates on. Our church operates on is what is donated to the general fund. It's the only money we use to operate the church. We don't use any money to the restoration fund, to the music fund. None of that operates our church, only what's given to the general fund. So last year we had the $158,000 given. Then we had our $25,000 gift from the government, which, to be honest, we'll probably pay out of our pocket in the future, but it helped us now. And then we had our expenses, which we budgeted $186. We came in at $185, so $1,000 less on our expenses. But what would have happened if we didn't get that $25,000? We would have been not able to meet those obligations, not able to pay those. So next year, when you look at our budget, we put that $27,000, as I said, but that's going to be gone. So we need to decide now what do we want to do now so we can save some of that for our future. That's what it was there for, to help us get through these times. It's gonna get through these times, but as a church, I know Pastor is really trying hard. I don't feel that it's gonna come back to where it was pre-pandemic. I think we have our core group. We have, some of our kids are back, but not everybody's back. It's different than when you and I grew up. There are now Sunday activities, so people aren't here on Sundays. We missed a lot of our holidays, and we have a lot of people that come only on the holidays, and then our giving goes up. Those are all things we relied on, and we can't rely on them anymore because we don't know if we'll have a Christmas service next year, if there'll be another variant, or if Easter will be the same as it was years ago and we'd have that income coming in. Or if we've got a whole bunch of kids singing here that could bring in their parents to shore up the plate a little bit. We can't rely on that. So here's some of the suggestions that we have kind of come up with them. You want me to go through them, or? You can go through what we kind of have.
So from an operating perspective, some of the things we've thought of, and Liz, I think you have a good update with waste management. So there's small things that we're doing. We had a commercial contract with waste management. Liz was able to negotiate a residential contract with waste management, and I think that saved about $1,500 a year, if I'm not mistaken. So there are things like that within the operating budget that we're looking to get creative on. We've already looked at insurance. That's a significant expense, and we will continue to look at that. We have trimmed back on the lawn and snow maintenance. We've been relying on volunteer help for that versus our contract that we used to carry. And so those are extra, it's extra pressure that we're putting on the congregation, but it has been a way for us to save a few dollars here and there. But what Liz is talking about is much larger than what that is going to get to us. And I remember one of my first meetings here at St. John was as a new member a few years back. I think Kathy, you were standing up here and telling us, hey, if you were to not go to Starbucks or Caribou, and as I stand here with my coffee, I thought, hey, I know what she's talking about. And I think your ask was, if I'm not mistaken, for everyone to give an extra $5 a month. And so I went home, and I'm a Simply Giving person, so I went online and I updated my, coffee got me. So I went home, updated my online giving, and I increased, I think, $10 a month. Because not everyone can give an extra $5 a month, and not everyone wants to give $5 a month, because I think, as Liz mentioned, preaching to the choir, all of us sitting here are typically here, or are, used to, we want to commune and we want to give, and so preaching to the choir has never been more true than it is right now. Thank you, that's a good one. So we have, statistically, we know 182 people, right? Regular givers. So I think typically our average attendance on Saturday, Sunday is probably 30, I would guess, on a weekly basis currently. So knowing that we have 182 regular givers, if we can get each of those 182 to give an additional $5 a month, I think we've calculated, and hopefully you don't have your calculators out because I think it came out to about $10,000 a year more. But that's the type of thing that we're looking at. We are also looking at other options, and I want to plant a couple seeds here with you all. As we look at Saturday service, and I know this has come up before, and I know there are people here who rely on that Saturday service, but those are some of the things we really have to look at as we pay for music. Now we can potentially look at Saturday service without an organist or without a musician. So we're looking at every possible thing that we can do to get creative. I think that the change in the internet, or the upgrade to the internet provider, and for those of you who live in the country, you know how awful Frontier can be to deal with. We've moved away from Frontier, and I think we're saving a few dollars there as well. So we're really, really looking hard and deep at the financials to see where we can trim. Liz, what else have I neglected to mention?
So I'm kind of an axe person, so come with that. As far as for waste management, I called them and gave them a plead and said how much we're using the garbage, and we're not a residential, but they dropped it down to, I think it'll be about $70 a month instead of $200 a month. but we stayed a business because if we have to switch residential, it could take another 3 months before we can save it. And then he gave us a whole month for free. And then we have a contract for a year. So we will save money in our garbage. I do have my lawnmower man over there that is cutting the church and pastor's yard, and we don't pay him anything. And then we also got, what's his name? We know him as the beat man, super nice guy. Terry Palma comes in with his he was a neighbor of my mom's. She said, well, go ask him because it would take hours for Richard or anybody to cut that back lot. And he said he would do that. He is doing that for free. He wouldn't want to charge the church. They did send him a gift card for gas, but super nice, so we saved the money there. I don't have a snow plow, so we cannot get rid of the snow service. We have to keep that. Things that I'm proposing or talking about, and by talking with the other church, is one, the Saturday service, 10 people or what that are coming. If you don't pay an organist that $80 some a week, that saves almost $4,000 plus your utilities for one service to be cut. A lot of churches around here do not have Saturday service anymore. They have Sunday service only. And so that is one way to cut. Or if you want to keep the Saturday service, Liz and Bob thought, well, then maybe no music. Not that you would be heartbroken if you didn't play both nights. I'm not sure because we didn't talk about it with you. But that's a big savings. That's a big savings, and I don't see where you would not recoup that. The other one, and I feel bad because the gentleman is sitting here, is Roman. Trondheim for a whole year spends $2,600 on their maintenance or their cleaning of their church. We spend over $9,000. We have half the amount of people. We have half the amount of Sunday school. People that rent it should be cleaning it themselves afterwards, and nobody's really renting it anyway. There is a huge budget savings if we have to cut that. Yes, it's hard because that is part of Romans, but it is part of what we have to think for the church going forward. Do we need to spend $9,000 to have our church cleaned annually for that? That's a discussion. It is, and it's a hard discussion, but we have to think about that. That's a lot of money. Kathy?
What does Trondheim do? They just like volunteers come in and back?
They have one lady, and then she's limited to her own, like so many hours a week. They budget $4,000, I think, is what they budget in last year because they don't have a lot of activities. It went down to $2,600.
Somebody coming, like
Yeah.
Roman, but much less time.
But much less time. Few hours. If you did, even if you would pay somebody 5 hours a week, $20 an hour, that's $100 a week times 4, 52 weeks, that's $5,200. That's why we're paying $9,000. Nothing against Roman, but I'm just saying it really has to be lean. The other one, and Kathy is retired now. We have not been able to find anybody to run the music position. They have searched. That's a $4,500 a year budgetary item. Over there, they have a music committee like we do. They meet, they pick the songs. Kathy was valuable. She is not, everybody should be replaceable, but we can't find anybody to replace her. So if we can't find anybody, that's a $4,500 budget item we can just cross off and say, well, we'll try it this way and see how it goes. Doesn't mean you can't bring it back on, and if a miracle happens and all of a sudden our church is full and our plates are full again and we can't say, hey, now let's get Kathy's job back on. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not cutting it for good. I'm cutting it to make it through the next few years, because I think the next few years we're still in a pandemic and we're still in this world of what we're living in. So that was the other one. We cut a couple of we did cut the music director, what was that called? Continuing education. There was another area. Utilities. My gosh, I got my gas bill and it was a little high. So not only are we have to cut, we got to take into consideration our gas. Oh my gosh, it's going to increase. Our electric's going to increase. Our little savings on our waste management is going to have to shore up our electric and gas. We did ask, they're going to replace 3 of our toilets with higher efficiency toilets that don't leak, because why is our water bill leak? Well, we got a few that are old and they leak. So that's just a quick expense to try to get the water bill down, because you all pay Montgomery water. What do you do in your own home? We have a high efficiency toilet that we don't do it. So that's another area that we can do. Office expenses and that, I think we're all just kind of trying to be diligent. Usually if we need something, we either donate it ourselves or whatever. Missy and I have some remodeling in there we're going to be doing on our own budget, but cleaning it up, I should say. Miscellaneous contracts, you will see that increase. That's because we've added in the electronic music, and those are separate fees that you have to pay annually so that you can play those songs in church. And we weren't legal during the years, and so now we're actually legal. So when you look at that, why did that increase? And then the big one, a couple big ones, the Synod, the 5,000, everybody asks about that one. We have to do that. We're a member of the Synod. We wouldn't be ELCA Synod. We've kept it the same for years. We're probably one of the lowest congregations that pay it. I really only pay it when we have enough cash, but I quote it in there and make sure they get paid at the end of the year. That cannot be a budget cut item because then we wouldn't be part of ELCA, wouldn't be helping our actual synod. And we use that information a lot. We'll talk about pastor now. If you go out to the synod website, you can go out and look at loads of information. Pastor's wages, insurance, everything is out on this synod. For pastor, is he a cut item? No, he is not a cut item this year because this man has not only taken over the music director, he's also now doing Sunday school superintendent because we don't have one. He does quite more responsibilities than what he has done in the past during the pandemic. Yes, there are less of us in the church, but his hours didn't go down. If anything, they got a little worse because he has to do a little more finagling around how to get things to work within the congregation. And when somebody's not there, he is there. And so we're very thankful for that because I know that he stepped up in a lot more areas where we'd have nobody to do that part. So and you'll see he got in a small increase. On the ELCA, they have synod guidelines, and it's a step increase. If you work for a school or anything, you automatically get that increase because he's been with the church for 14 years. We don't give him anything else above that, have not for years. I think when I was on council, he probably went 2 years without a raise, so we got a little bit behind, and then we thought, well, what are we gonna do when we want a new pastor? If we don't keep up with that budgetary line item, then we're gonna have to find a new pastor all the way down at the bottom of the line to be able to afford him. And I think that was kind of an issue when we were finding a pastor because we were so used to our senior pastors and we didn't want a brand new one, so we went with one that was kind of in the middle that we can afford. I guess if you think that that's too high of a budget, go out to the synod guidelines, check out what a pastor makes when they're here for 1 year or 2 years versus 14 versus 20, and you will see we are right spot on with his wage. And if you want to feel that that's a cut of where you want to do that in the future, I'm not suggesting it. You can at least have your information to decide. And then his other wage increase is in insurance. Yes, that is almost $200 a month is his insurance. When we hired him, he was hired on as part of his package deal to get the gold plan. And I can't remember, what was the difference between the silver and gold? Not much. I think it was not worth it to drop him down to the silver to save, I think it was maybe not even 100. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we do look at that every year. But then we're thinking, why do we want the man that is the leader of our church, that is here, that is on call 24/7, to have to be the person to be cut because we don't have enough people to give or to be able to meet his wage. So for me and you guys can all prove me wrong. That's one budget item I cannot literally present to you and say, hey, cut the pastor's salary or cut his insurance. Nobody cuts my insurance at work. It stays the same. It's like, it is what it is. We know how it's gonna come up every year. $5 a coffee to make up $2,000 on pastor, give up my coffee. I'm a caribou person, but I could probably do that. Although I personally am not simply giving yet because I like to save my fee. They charge a little bit of fee, but it's okay. So those are kind of what things I have addressed on here. I guess I would like to know some feedback from you. I would like to know as a group up here and as the rest of our council members, because they don't all know what to do because they represent the church. So is there any questions or any comments, or when are we think we can handle some of these cuts? I don't think we want to wait a whole year and assume we're going to come back next year. So Kathy.
Two questions.
Sure.
Does the music committee still meet?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so they could pick up the son. So I think that, in my opinion, that amount of money that Kathy used to be for organizing that, I think that could be a start. And my second thing is minimally, I think that the music on Saturday night, we haven't been coming very much at all. So I'm not one to say, but we like Saturday night. It was a good thing, but I think, again, we have to look at the greater good. And if it's a short term, that again can be something brought back, or at least have the music to save that amount of money. If we start with that and give it 3 months and see if, or something, and then see, are people still coming without the music? I don't know.
I can see that we would still have multiple services at Easter and at Christmas. We would still have multiple services, but those other everyday things. But those two items you just talked about is $8,500.
A lot of money.
That's a big chunk.
Or you, yep.
The Saturday night service was started because of Green Giant, so that the people got out, could come to church on Saturday night. I don't believe that that's a problem today, and I think we could justify dropping the Saturday night service. That's my opinion.
Madam Chairman,
Yeah, that's her. I'm bookkeeper.
okay, perhaps we should, I call for a ballot whether or not to drop Saturday night service.
I think there could be two options on Saturday, to drop it or to just discontinue paying an organist. Could be two things.
Do we want to, the other thing, another option, you could drop and see how it affects your utilities and everything and bring it back at that, just to see, because it's not just the organist, we're turning on and heating the church that whole Saturday.
And lights and.
And the lights and all of that. Or you could try one Saturday a month and not have it 3 Saturdays, maybe just the first Saturday of the month. I don't know. Those are just suggestions, but I do like her that it should be a ballot vote.
I remember back when I was working at school and we had to start charging for everything, and I think some of you on the council have heard it, but I cried and cried over it because I was the organizer of all the scouts and everybody could come in, and I loved our school and I loved our community, I wanted them to use it, but that's exactly what we went through it, saying, but we're turning on the lights, we're using toilet paper, we're flushing
Right.
toilets, we're having someone have to come through and sweep or something, with that. And it was very, very painful, but it sure didn't stop anybody else from doing it. So we have to sometimes take our emotions aside. And Liz has said, we have to think of it as part of us has to think of it as a business. And we have to be open, you have to make it continue to work. So I think we have to think in those terms for at least short term until the life changes or what our new life is.
Dennis had a question.
Well, just, if we discontinue the music on Saturday evening, does that just make pastor have more to do if he's gonna set up music, or, how's that all gonna be handled? You save $80, but,
More
does
work for pastor.
have to, set everything up?
There would be it would be a slight thing as far as, because I would have to still pick out some music and go through some of it. We do have, currently if we don't have a musician, we did that a couple times over Christmas. We did a couple times just when she was getting acknowledged for her work for the extension service through the U of M. We did actually we've got some MP3 songs and stuff that we could actually utilize, and it does out of the red ELW hymnal, and we could be able to have some music along with that. And that is one of the things to look at, is there is a way to actually have some, but it would take some planning, yes.
Would the committee help plan that? The music committee that meets?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 'Cause it's looking at a couple different, varieties or a couple of sounds.
I'm okay with that. Oh,
I
that
have
was
a
David,
question.
sorry.
Could you give us the breakdown on the $36,000 that's for the pastor's health and other benefits?
That's his health insurance for him and his family, and then it's also his disability, like his disability insurance is in there, you know. His retirement contribution is is in the pastor pension. So it's not his retirement, it'd be like his health, what's all in there? Help me out here.
Health, there's
Life
disability,
insurance,
there's a life
disability
insurance.
insurance, and that is what's included in the health.
Employer taxes too, like your life, like TRA or,
Pastor doesn't pay taxes.
Medicare.
He's not on, yeah, he doesn't because he's a pastor.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Usually that's like 15%.
Yeah, he's a pastor, so we don't pay that. That's what he's got his pension and then his little housing equity that he gets, that's a standard in his contract too. That's for his future, when he leaves, he's got a little built up so that he has something to put down payment on your future home. It's part of every pastor's package, it's not that he gets it, it's part of their thing.
And it's more tied into an equity thing, so we can't even touch it, I don't think, until 60 or 65, so.
Yeah, so.
Madam Chairman, we had a motion before the floor. Is it lost without a second? Is that what we are assuming?
I will put it up there. Charles, your motion was to discontinue Saturday service, is that correct? Was that your motion?
To vote, to do a
To
ballot.
put a vote.
To do a ballot.
With what?
Tell me what your question was again so I get it correct.
My motion was to discontinue, vote whether or not we discontinue the service, Saturday night service. Now then, with the other options were included, I would permit those,
Okay,
but I call for the vote at this time.
okay. So we have a motion
But-
to vote to either drop Saturday services or to drop the music part. Is that correct?
Yes, let's
Okay.
go that way.
Is there a second to that motion? Carol Kiko is giving us a second to that motion.
Okay.
Something, will that be,
Yeah.
show of hands or a written ballot?
What would you like to do? Show of hands or a ballot? We'd have to get some paper and pencils.
Show of hands.
Show of hands? Okay, I need a counter. You're the treasurer, you're gonna be the counter. Any further discussion on this before we vote?
Wendy,
Yes,
I knew you had your hand up, so.
Yes, well, if we did away with Saturday night, I know probably 5 people that after I got the call that was going to be brought up here, about, 5 of them, one, oh gosh, that doesn't work because then I don't have a vehicle, my husband has a vehicle. There's just all different reasons. Some work through the summer, longer hours. I know it was Green Giant before, many years ago, but then there's other jobs now too, golf course, still Green Giant and things like that, some other people have that. So, and when you say 10 people, yeah, that's about average now, but not all 10 come on that same night.
That's correct.
So I missed last night to come here. Dave Wingy missed last night to come here. We would have been there. Other people that couldn't be here today went to last night.
Are you offering an alternative? Are you offering an alternative, I guess?
Well, other churches, I know the church down below have not left. They still have their Saturday night. Some people have a Wednesday night service. So that's why they probably don't have a Saturday night service. But another thing I had brought up too was, Kathy knows this too, when we were in school, all of a sudden, we had great insurance. I had my whole family insurance. And then all of a sudden, we can't afford this, we gotta cut somewhere. You have insurance, but not your spouse. So there were many of them that, and I think if you check with the school right now, the insurance has really dropped dramatically. The teachers have private insurance, but I know I talked to one teacher who said they're paying $800 a month for their family. So maybe,
Yeah, that's a complicated topic.
Yeah.
Insurance is expensive and it goes up a lot every year. And it's negotiated in contracts. It's by contract by either your individual contract or your contract group. Family health insurance at TCU is extra, it's expensive, but what people don't normally realize is that the plan that that person is probably on is zero out-of-pocket dollar. So the way that those funds are set up is for family insurance, it's around $20,000, but the first dollar of contribution goes to an HSA or an HRA. So if you have no out-of-pocket costs for your health insurance, that's going to be very expensive. And if they don't spend that $7,000 that goes into their HSA, they get to keep it. Now, most plans, like when I had my former life, or corporate, you know, my employer contribution went to pay for my premium. And if I wanted to fund an HRA or an HSA, we can't fund an HRA. If I wanted to fund an HSA, I did that out of my paycheck. So sometimes it's just, insurance is really tricky to talk about with people, but sometimes people don't realize that there's zero risk in that health insurance plan. And if you have zero risk, you pay a lot of money. If you have a lot of choice, if you want to go to, you know, that plan is probably a plan that you can go to 99% of every doctor. If you want a lot of choice, you pay a lot of money. So we have 2 health plans where you can have basically a Mayo plan, where Mayo's in network, or a non-Mayo plan, because it's very expensive to have Mayo covered. So we've tried to add ones where, you know, if you want to be a little bit more selective, and if you want to, you know, most people, we have 90% of our people on insurance spend less than $1,000 a year on insurance, but they're putting $7,000 into a savings account. So $6,000 stays with them for future life. But like, that's very expensive. Like, you know, if you're getting a premium plan where you can go anywhere and you have $7,000 going into a savings account and you have zero out-of-pocket risk, those things make it very expensive. So like, it is expensive. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying it's also complicated and complex. And that different negotiation groups negotiate differently. Our teachers on single get paid 130% of premium, but the families don't get as much. So, I mean, it's very hard to take one data point and apply it all over. But it's very expensive, more choice, less risk adds to it. And oftentimes people negotiate for pay and not for benefit. Because if you have a spouse with great benefits, you don't want to get your benefit. You don't want to get your increase in benefits. You wanted to pay. So it's hard to talk about. But yeah, I don't think it's unique to the school or anywhere. It goes up a lot.
It goes up a lot.
10, 15%. I think it went up 25% in 2 years, over the course of 2 years. So.
Yeah. And it's every business, it's not just there. And they're on a whole different plan than us, Wendy. You've been on the council, you see what they offer us. Now, let me just give my piece when you comment on the 5 people. So what we're asking is to reduce pastor's wage, because that's part of his wage packet, by $1,000. So we have these 5 people that might not be able to come on a Saturday service where we're going to save $4,000 or $5,000 with the utilities. So we're now asking our pastor to take a cut in your package that we offered you to Cam. Oh, well, now, Pastor, we can't afford you. We'd like you to go down, even though when we hired you, we agreed with you were going to get the gold plan because we knew you have a family and children. Our previous pastors did not have a family and children, except for Pastor Kashadi, and I don't know, man, how insurance was back then. Yeah, he probably gave Dr. Lara turkey or something, I don't know. But that's kind of what we're thinking at when you're thinking at this fix. Well, now let's cut pastors down even further so that we can accommodate. I just feel personally that's just seems like and we can't compare ourselves to the school. You probably have got a lot of plans. We get 5.
I thought on the school, if they had a class and only 4 people signed up, they wouldn't be able to have it.
They cut the class.
Even though it was very good and my kid is really smart and should be in that advanced thing, they can't have it because they can't afford the teacher. And I think, again, in good times you can, and I think we are not in good times. So I think that we need to call the question. I call the question.
Okay.
Any other discussion? discussion on this topic of the Saturday services. How do we do 2 questions on the vote? The first vote is going to be to drop music for the Saturday service. So you could vote yes or no on both, but if we drop the music, that's one thing. If we drop the service, the music goes with it. Do you understand? Otherwise, I can't figure out how do we vote for one or the other. So if we vote for the drop the music first, so dropping the paid organist for Saturday services, that's the ballot question. And we can do by show of hands. Those in favor of dropping the cost of the organist for Saturday services, please raise your hand. Those in favor.
Keep your hands raised, I'm sorry, we're trying to go.
Is Kate raising her hand? Well, I'm not counting this.
And then we have to do the notice.
And, yeah, that's down here. And those opposed to dropping the music on Saturday services.
Hello?
I see 0.
Still at a meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Then the next question is to drop the I hate to say drop, how about pause? Pause the Saturday services until we feel we can bring it back again. This is a budget question that we estimate can save
That's fine.
$4,000 just by not paying for music, and $5,000 when you factor in utilities, heat, and electricity. So those in favor of pausing Saturday services, please raise your hand. Did you have a question, Charles, or were you
Yes,
raising?
I didn't quite understand the question. I think I'm turned way up there.
The vote for this one was to pause Saturday services for the time being, so not have Saturday services, and we'll revisit. 3 months sounds good.
Thank you.
You have to think of the numbers till the end of the year so that we're starting out fresh next
Right.
year with a fresh.
So we had the vote in favor. Those opposed to that, please raise your hands.
Opposed to, what was the question again?
To pause Saturday services.
Opposed to pausing Saturday service.
Pause Saturday service, the whole service.
Okay, we're
I
getting
think
to
I think you need to either say don't have a negative. You're either-
I think
You
you
gotta
just
do one or
do
the
the-
other, and either you're gonna make the decision or we are.
Drop just do the
So
pause
either
the
we're
Saturday
dropping music or
service.
dropping
Those in favor of pausing, we did that, so let's do it again.
Then
so we're
that's your
sure.
total vote, and if you don't get, then you can drop the music if that's,
All right.
if enough people vote, we don't wanna pause it, because we might.
How many are we all
People are
together?
voting both ways.
Let's do a vote on that one again so we get it correct. So this is if you are in favor of pausing Saturday services.
To oppose to.
If you are voting in favor
Okay,
to
in favor, okay.
pause Saturday services, please raise your hand.
Pause Saturday service, if you wanna stop Saturday service, for now.
Those opposed to that, those who want to keep Saturday services as they are. Didn't get one more time? Can you raise your hands again if you oppose dropping the Saturday service? In other words, you want to keep it as it is. So if you can raise your hands. No change.
Well, they might
Even with no music list. Decided, either way, we have to do one or the other. So now, you've voted on if you want to oppose to drop the Saturday service. The next vote is, we're still going to change the Saturday service, so now you're voting, do you want to keep the Saturday service with no music? So either way, we're making a cut to Saturday. We're not keeping it the same. You're either losing your music or you're losing the whole service. So, that's the vote. Does that make sense?
To me. Does everybody have a piece of scratch paper? That might
Otherwise,
be
you
easier.
have to write on a piece of pad
that help? Charles, does that, do you agree to that? So we're clear. This is a big decision and we want to be clear.
Music or no service, period. So we cannot keep the service with the music, we cannot afford it.
So on the back, it'll be the right, no service, no music. One or the other.
Yeah, no service or no music. Thank you.
What's the next item here?
What about Romans?
On that line item?
Connie's down there. Connie's down there.
Kathy, is that just a council decision
To reduce-
Romans back, or do we have to?
Reduce, council decision,
And then
thank
what
you.
about the music director position? Same thing, council.
Right,
But then you need to adjust that in your budget.
Because there's nobody doing it now.
right, that's correct.
No.
All right. Are there any other budget discussion items? The council will make the decision on custodial services, and the music director will make those decisions, but the big one was the church service that we'll vote on at the end. Any further discussion as we move along? And
Can I just say one thing? I'm sorry, and I'm gonna sit down for good. Because you have to approve the budget, if you don't do those as line items now, you're approving the budget for the year as is. And we want to cut them prior to the, right? Kathy, is that correct? If they approve the budget, we can't do those line items after they approve the budget.
For Roman, yes, the other one, no, because no one's making that now, so it could be a line item, but you don't spend it.
Okay, so,
But for Roman, yes, you would have to show it.
so we'd leave it on as a line item, but we're not gonna spend it because we're not gonna use it. But for Roman, we'd have to show it on the budget now, before you guys approve the budget. That's the issue.
And what are we recommending for the custodial budget? To move from $9,600 to, here it is, 9,000,
We budgeted 9,500.
9,600.
That's last year's budget.
Okay. So we have a budget, a line item in our budget for custodial services at $9,500. We'd like to reduce that. I'm not sure what your recommendation is. To reduce that in half, to reduce that to a certain dollar amount, but that would also take a vote of the congregation.
It would be a lot, you would present it as the budget, if we reduced it in half.
I guess the only thing, you could leave it, again, you could leave the agenda, you could leave it on there, and then the council could decide to cut hours. So you wouldn't spend it all. I don't know, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's, because you're approving that. So I don't know, and maybe it's people who don't want to cut that, that's up to you. Somebody would have to vote on that budget line item to reduce that by 50%. Because we're discussing the budget, so somebody, so if I say, I'll do it.
I move to whatever we just said.
I move to reduce, I do that on the council.
I move to reduce the, custodial line item by 50%.
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Kathy Peterson, a second by Dennis Smith, to reduce the custodial line item by 50%. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now I'd ask for a motion to approve the budget unless there are any other items here that need discussion, other than Saturday service, which we'll vote on at the end. Thank you. I have a motion by Jim Sheehock to approve the budget. Second by Charlene. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Nominations for council positions. We are looking for 3 council members, each serve 3-year terms. Carol Kiko has served 2 3-year terms and is not eligible to run again, so thank you, Carol, for 6 years of service and what you continue to do for all of us. My first 3-year term is up. I am eligible to run again, and I will raise my hand to volunteer to do that if you so desire. Dawn Anderson was elected last year to finish out the last year of a 3-year term and has decided not to run again. We thank Dawn for her service on the council. That leaves 2 open positions. We do have a couple people that raised their hand. And And I would, let's see, can I just nominate them? Rochelle and Dennis have been asked and have agreed to run for council. So if I could get a nom. Dennis Smith and Rochelle Kubel
Okay.
have agreed to have their names on the ballot for church council. Any other nominations, any others? Unless you change your mind.
I move nomination C, so we cast a unanimous ballot for the 3 people for council.
Thank you. Motion by Kathy, second by Jim. Those in, well, then that'll be on the ballot thingy, right? You got it. All right. Then if we pass out the ballots for that voting, so it's the 3 council members on the front and on the back, please cast your ballot for the Saturday service. Either yes, to keep Saturday service as it is, or just to reduce by music. So there will be a cut to Saturday services. Is it either just cutting the music, or is it cutting the service entirely? So make your comments on the back. 2 choices. And then, yeah, 2 things. And then if Jim Sheehock has a minute, he can give us an update on the cemetery.
Just a minute, but that's okay. In seriousness, I really want to thank this and all the church council people, anybody involved, because these times, as I step down, these times really suck. There's no better way to put it. But it's, can everybody hear me? Yeah. Anyway, we're definitely in hard times, and we got to support these people who we are electing just now to continue to work in the best interest of the church and do whatever we need to do, and their positions just aren't any fun right now. Anyway, I'm going to start out with a little bit of an apology. You don't have anything printed in the financial report. Missy is going to print it in the next newsletter as far as our cemetery report, so everybody will have access to that. I do have copies of things with me today if somebody wants to know something sooner. On the financial report, I'll make it as simple as possible. There will be a printout to show all this, but for 2021, for the year, we were a positive $668.84 at the end of the year compared to the first. So just so everybody knows, our source of income is selling plots and then interest on our CDs, which interest on our CDs was $218 and something. Also, our cemetery records are all now up to date, even to this date, mainly because nothing has happened out there since the end of December. But they're recorded electronically on a computer program that Steve Sheffert designed for us. And then he also went through and put in all records, even current ones. Took that load off of me, and I appreciate it so much. But I don't know how much time he put in to get all the old records stored on there. And right now we're working on getting it set so anybody can go in there and look through them. But right now we don't have that yet. If we opened it up to that, anybody could go in there and also change things at this point. We don't want that. We made some changes in our plot prices. They previously, for a member, they were $500. That went to $750. And a second burial in that plot, which has to be a cremation, first one can be either or, is now $350. Non-members went to $1,250, and the second one at $700 for the second burial. Also, winter storage, we didn't have any this year or last. Had a lot of inquiries last year with the COVID thing because people were postponing internments, and So now we went to, and I feel bad after hearing what else was said, that now we're going to ask people for more money for that. But we kind of have to also in order, no, that's not an apology. It's just what we have to do. Winter storage for a member would be $100, and non-member is $200. I think that covers most of it. Currently, Doug Filson, I don't know if anybody knows him. He's from the Heidelberg area. That's who does our lawn care, does the mowing and stuff. And he's currently at less than 40% of what our lowest last bid was for someone else to do it. He's getting a little bump for 2022 here, but we're really thankful for him, because otherwise this wouldn't work either, budget-wise. So, and I make sure Doug knows from me that we're grateful for his job and what he does out there. I guess so everybody knows, the cemetery board members, Gary Hartwick is a treasurer, and Gary did get the information to me on time, and I thought I had another week to get it to Missy. Anyway, and I was wrong, so, but it's forthcoming, and like I said, I have copies of it with me today. So it's Gary Hartwick, Dave Sheffert, Jim Hayda, Steve Schroeder, and myself, and what will be published in the newsletter, and I have copies with me, my phone number, so call anytime. Any questions now of me?
I just have two quick questions.
Yes.
So for the original document, Missy's not here, will those come back to the church then, all the originals? Because we're going to clean out Kathy's office and make that our historical room.
You bet they will.
If you're using his historical, that's not going in.
Liz, I'll guarantee you they're coming back to the church, because I was blessed with them a few years ago, and did go through, because there was things that were not necessary. Trust me, they weren't. I made that decision pretty much on myself, from envelopes that something got mailed to previous people over the years. But I cleaned it up some, but yes, they definitely will come back to the church.
Okay, and we'll have a good designated area, but even all of our
Okay, yeah,
historical stuff
yeah.
will start going in that box.
Yeah.
Once we start.
And I know Liz, she's gone. She asked me earlier if we'd be willing to come into a church council meeting, and so that we can show the church council what Steve has done for us. And hopefully by then we can have it set up so it's secure for people to just look, plus good for Steve or I at this point to put entries in as things go on.
Well, that's wonderful.
Oh, yeah. He is, Dave and Dorothy, you did a good job on that boy. Yeah, thank you. No, I can't imagine what the cost would have been, because I was just started the process and looking, and the cheapest computer program I could find for that type of thing was $3,000 just to buy the program. And no, I couldn't set one up myself, by no means. So he's done that. Actually, you'll see in the financial report, but we agreed to give him a $3,000 stipend, which he donated right back to the cemetery board. That's the way. Yeah.
I have a quick question, and I know money is tight, or even a future thing.
Liz, excuse me, but you said two and you had two? No,
Oh, yeah,
go ahead.
Don't I have two?
I don't, I thought I heard a second one.
Is there anything in the future to fix the pump so we would have water out there?
I have talked to a well person that actually is out that way, and he's assured me he would stop and look if there's any possibility. Yeah, I'd like to do that. Otherwise, it's not impossible to set something up so that there would be water there, and like a storage tank thing that, and I'd be willing to facilitate that and make sure it gets filled with water. But it's somewhat doubtful, he said, to make that still work, but he was going to look at it. And I'd like to say it's functional so we don't have to deal with the banding in a while, but we'll see how that goes too.
Jim, that well has been filled with sand to shut it up. So nobody could get water out of that well. You'd have to drill a new well.
Okay. There still is a like a cavity down, but I imagine that could have just settled, but, I'm still gonna let him check it, but if you feel that was done, then that's a answer to the question also.
Maybe a suggestion is having some rain barrels out there.
Well,
That's what we use for our community garden.
okay, for that, we'd have to put a different roof on the mausoleum, or something, or build something just to catch rainwater, and, I mean, I think it might be easier. I have tanks of 300 to 500 gallons that we could set out there, and I could try to keep it full throughout the summer, especially the spring, Memorial Weekend, and those times when people are adding new flowers and doing things.
Gallon water trucks work too at home.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people do that.
It's hard for the senior citizens, to be
Oh, I
honest,
know.
to get
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
And sometimes we like to water like Pastor Kashadi's and other people's that are dry, but there's not enough water and have to go back to town, because you know they don't have family to keep theirs watered. You put something where,
Oh, I agree, but if they have to do it in wells.
yeah, so any water would be great, thank you.
Yeah.
That was my
Trust me, we'll definitely look into it and try to make that. Keep talking. Thank you.
Well, I have results of the ballot, of the vote here, and none of these decisions are easy, and nobody wants to make cuts to services that have been here historically. There were 28 ballots cast. On the election side, 28 ballots were cast. 2 of them were blank. So by a vote of 26 to 2 blanks. Thank you to Dennis and Rochelle for joining the police force up here, or joining the council. And on the vote of cutting the service or just cutting the music, the vote was 16 to 11 to cut the service completely, with that one ballot was blank, was not voted. So by a vote of 16 to 11 to cut the service completely. We'll let the council decide how and when that happens, and I don't like to say cut, it's a pause. We will have multiple services at Easter and Christmas, and if it comes a time that we feel we can add that back regularly or every week, we'll let the council decide. So thank you for voting from your heart. We appreciate that. It's not easy for anybody. If there are no other items to be brought before the congregation here today, I would seek I would seek a motion to adjourn.
Can I have a hard question yet?
Yes.
Did the council, the big thing is, how are we gonna get people back into church? What is the problem? Do you ever think of sending out like a survey in the newsletter or something, saying, what can we do to get people back to church?
That's an idea. A survey would be a good idea.
Yeah, but not just us, I mean, everybody.
Bring a friend. Bring a friend.
Pardon?
I understand. We know we get the children back in Sunday school, the children performing in church, that helps, but those numbers have been down too. Until people feel safe about coming back to church, I think people also have gotten used to having their Sunday mornings off or their Saturday evenings off, and they haven't come back to the habit of coming to church, but we want to be here when they want to come back. So.
I can't really, I know that COVID's out there and people are definitely afraid of it. We take precautions, washing hands, wearing masks sometimes, but just looking around and you see some of the people that used to come here all the time, and they're sitting at a sporting event. The other night, I was working the dance, and I thought, I'm sitting there's 3 families there, so they can't be afraid of the COVID because they're in a great crowd.
Kids are busy. There's
Yeah.
activities planned Saturdays and Sundays,
So
tournaments.
that's maybe we need a Wednesday night.
We're batting that around as well, how that would fit into a Wednesday.
Or, there you go.
And other families have left our church and have gone to others.
So we want to know why. What can we do to get them back here? So maybe that was some kind of a survey that you could put
I
together.
like that idea. We have been talking about the Wednesday option, and I think as someone who was looking for a place to worship, a different place to worship a few years ago, and as someone who has kids that are busy, right? I'm in that group of people that are you see me there, Wendy.
Yeah. But I see you in church.
Well, not as often as I'd like.
No.
I'll just admit that. No.
Yeah, and I was on Saturday night.
Right, but that Wednesday option I think is really, really important to discuss further, because I my demographic,
Yeah.
which is the people that have kids that are involved in activities who have no trouble filling their weekends with those activities, but don't have, time in their minds to come to church. So, and that was one of the big selling points when I talked to Pastor. I said, you mean my daughter can enroll in confirmation here as an 8th grader and you're going to theater? So that, I was sold, right? I just thought, what a great way to bring, my daughter into a community or into a family. So I think it is something that we have to look at.
Pastor's busy on Wednesday nights already.
He is very busy, and that's one of the things that
Yes.
we've been talking about.
Yes, Doris?
Make a motion, let the meeting be adjourned.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor by Doris. Is there a second?
Second.
Diane? Or did you have a question?
Before we adjourn, can I just?
Yes, please.
I appreciate the tough talk because it's important, we're going through all this at home too. I pulled up and got gas the other day, it was over $50, and I hadn't done that in a while. But I think that, our church is experiencing what we're all experiencing in our own households and in our businesses too. But I also think it's important to remember that we're different than the businesses because we're the family of God, and this is our church here. And I just think that before we adjourn, if it's okay with you, I think that we need to pray about, we say, why aren't people here? Well, let's pray about it. Let's think about how God can help us bring more people here. Because we're here, and like when I came here, there were 2 choices, and I wasn't a Catholic, so here's where I ended up.
That's all right, we'll keep you.
And I'll tell you another thing, when I came here, and actually yesterday was my 14th anniversary here working in Minnesota, and I think about when I came here, the thing that really filled my heart was all the little kids. And we still have a lot of little kids here for an aging church like we've got. But at any rate, I just feel real strongly that we ought to pray about this together as the group that is most concerned. And if it's okay with you, I'll lead us in prayer.
Thank you.
Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this church here in Montgomery. And we thank you for all the people, the faithful people that are here, that were born in this church and that have been brought to this church. We thank you so much for our pastor, Jason, and for all of the work that he does to lead this congregation and to help see the needs in our neighborhoods. And I just ask you to touch us all to see ways that we can grow your family here at St. John. And I ask you to stir in our members a hunger to come back to church here, to be with us in person, in this wonderful building, but in your community here, to do your will and to grow our family here in Montgomery. We have needs everywhere in this town, and I just ask that you lead us and guide us so that we can continue to be your family here together at St. John. In your loving Son's name, amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Diane. I have a motion by Doris to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Carol. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Congratulations.
That's right.
Congratulations on so much work that helped.
Somebody's making coffee maybe, huh? Oh, yeah, stop your coffee.
Whoever gets there.